9 shots, 9 bullets, 9 wounds. That's exactly what it took to stop the religious fanatic. And, as the news anchor said, even those shots couldn't kill him instantly. He was still breathing, lying on the bloody sidewalk and saying prayers. Tough guy. That's what the news called him. Surprising, though, to take so many bullets and not die. I looked at the TV picture. Bloody cobblestones, reporters, a changing picture. The usual if someone dies in the center of town. Shock, sensation, magic, even miracle. But the truth is, it's routine. I'm pretty sure the news editor-in-chief, after reviewing the tape more than condescendingly, let it air. There's always been a lot of psychos, except I knew this one personally. Yes. As soon as I looked at his face, I immediately remembered his name and surname. Grigory Proshin. Weird-looking guy from my floor. Well, as strange. He just didn't socialize much. Read peculiar literature, took walks, and as a rule, was always alone. I wouldn't say he was a freak or an idiot, though, no. A guy like a guy, quite adequate, fully understands jokes and pranks, just doesn't like them, preferring solitude and religious themes. But then again, he's never been particularly rowdy, and if I'd been told 3 days ago that he'd be chanting slogans about the coming of darkness with a gun, I wouldn't have believed it. Finishing my cup of coffee, I turned up the sound. Turns out he was threatening suicide unless the president or someone from the government was brought to him. Apparently, he thought a gun was a good enough reason to get to know him. He wanted to deliver some news that couldn't even be mailed because it was so urgent. But the first policeman, caught on Red Square, did not appreciate the idea, and as soon as he saw the revolver, immediately fired the entire clip at poor Grigory. A couple of times, of course, he missed out of fear, but the rest of them were exactly on target. The first, just below the knee, 2, in the left thigh, 3 in the stomach, spleen, and chest. But that was later, when the policeman Seryoja Petrukin shot himself. Again, not fatal, because his enemy had time to live a little on the bloody cobblestones. But I was wrong, probably. Sarcasm in such cases is an empty thing. It's a pity for the man. He didn't want to harm anyone. He just lived on. Although, of course, the latter is a bit out of the ordinary. Around lunchtime, the news about what had happened became more detailed. We found out what exactly Grigory was talking about, what he wanted to warn the public about. The matter, in fact, was simple. The darkness was to come to the houses, to devour and consume everything that existed, and, accordingly, we should not wait for salvation. Turning off the TV, I lay down on the bed. Sadly, I'm alone again this weekend. My girlfriend has gone to her relatives in Ukraine, and with me only the buzzing of the street and a half-empty refrigerator. In some respects, of course, I can be envied, but alas, for the most part, I am crushed by the current situation. That's why I keep coming back to Grigory's corpse. He is, as cynical as it may sound, my entertainment, giving some food for thought. And it's free. Having methodically laid out all his misfortunes, I am satisfied that my life is more or less bearable. I don't have to run out into the square, waving a gun around and wailing about how bad things are about to happen. I'm in control, I don't even think about it. But it did to him. So, he had everything much worse than me. Hey, Grigory, you should work in the church. There you would be perfectly well known as Father Gregory. And all your fanaticism would be skillfully incorporated into the whole thing. A hero shot by a cowardly policeman. No, it doesn't work like that. Heroes and saviors of mankind can't be shot by a cowardly cop. It's vulgar. No, he is a crazy fanatic, running away from his shabby life. With such thoughts, I fell asleep, waking up about 2 hours later from a monotonous muttering under the door. I didn't immediately understand what was going on, thinking at first that it was the whispering of an old woman, my neighbor who lives to my left, through the door of another old neighbor. The old woman is always grumbling, always walking around the floor barefoot, and always looking for the cat that is always running away from her, getting into every kind of conflict possible. So naturally I thought of her first, because I knew that no one else could whisper under my door but her. And then suddenly I began to distinguish words, among which were open, sunshine, let me in, let me look at you. Correlating these words with the grandmother I knew, I realized it wasn't her. This woman never said anything like that. She just couldn't say it. Her hatred for those around her was too strong. When I got up, I looked at the door. It was completely dark downstairs, where there was a small gap in the floor. I got up, threw on my robe, and walked to the door. The whispering got a little louder. He sensed me, sensed I was near. I touched the knob. I wanted to open the door and punch the Joker in the face. But when I touched the knob and felt its coldness, I changed my mind. I suddenly realized that all this was extremely strange, that I shouldn't be in a hurry to open the door, especially not to someone I don't know. Too bad I didn't have a peephole. I asked loudly, "Who's there? What's the game?" The whispers died down, and just a few seconds later it started again, but in a child's voice, as if there was a little girl begging me to open the door. A ripple went down my spine. And not so much from this change of voices, as from the fact that I realized that my neighbor also had someone under the door asking to be opened. True, in a gentle female voice. And the neighbor opened the door. And the neighbor did. After that, the noise under my door stopped, at least for one night. Alexander, his name was Alexander, he also lived alone, and after his divorce from his wife, he'd completely lost it. He lived on the right side of the house, and on the night I'd first heard the whispering, he'd just come back from another night of sightseeing. He was the one who'd opened the door, saving me from the annoying muttering. And then he did a magnificent headfirst somersault from the 15th floor. And as the cynical reporters, who had loved us lately, noticed, it was a pity that such a pirouette was wasted. At night, such a perfect flight could be seen only by the street lamps that dimly illuminated the street. And I wondered. I had heard the whispering and knew for sure that Sasha, who was sensitive to women's voices, could not just sit there and listen to a woman asking him to open the door. No, he would definitely open the door, giving all his attention to the person asking. And it was because of this gentleness that his wife had left him. A generally good man. All day long I silently stared at the police, walking back and forth, and constantly answered the same questions. And of course I lied, because I realized that if I told the truth, I would immediately be sent to a hospital, where they would give me long and thorough injections, including by force, that my tender body could not afford. I did not like injections at all and constantly avoided them, only in the most extreme cases, agreeing to the needle. Besides, the policeman who questioned me, fat, sweaty, with a huge wart under his third chin, made a lasting impression on me. He stank so badly that it was unbearable to sit at the same table with him, and he was always begging for a drink. First milk, then tea, then just tap water, and so on for 2.5 hours. Good thing they let me off work. I couldn't stand it in the evening after a full day's work. Exhausted by the incessant door knocking and questioning, I collapsed into bed at about 8 o'clock in the evening. And by 12, I was awake, awakened by extraneous noises. Only this time it was no longer mumbling, but the sound of scratching claws and a soft, slightly flirtatious meow. What a weird cat, I thought as I opened my eyes. Then it occurred to me that it must be the neighbor's cat that had returned, and only after the first two conclusions, I suddenly realized that it was yesterday's whisper came back again. Only this time, it was already in the form of a cat. Soft, small, with a cute cat face, naive and attractive. A fluffy little ball of happiness, peacefully scratching at my steel door. And scratching persistently, not realizing that the owner does not want to open it. No, the lump definitely wants to come in and make friends. Friends forever. I closed my eyes. I didn't really want to sleep, but I knew I had to. After all, some people can. Indeed, some people, my friend can. He always falls asleep to any noise. And he'd get over this trouble in no time. Though no, he would probably have opened the door. That's when I heard my neighbor's door open. How could I have forgotten? She loves cats so much. That grumpy, unafraid grandmother. She loves cats so much. Is it all for her? But why my door too? No, there's something wrong here. However, it was too late to think about it. The door opened, and the furry animal went inside, leaving me in enchanted ignorance about the fate of my infernal grandmother until the morning. No screams, no other sounds, just the door opening and closing just as easily. The grandmother clapped her hands in joy and mumbled words of greeting and invitation, her own, in all probability, last words, because they took her away in the morning already cold, which hinted at a very quick demise. According to the cops, she slipped in the bathroom, right on top of her cat, which she threw across the tile under her own weight, tearing all the curtains. Cranial trauma, incompatible with life. The sad verdict of a sad life. Not an ounce of pity, just a dry, irritated tone. Of course, it was the second suicide on our floor alone and the 20th death in the house, which has already been covered on ORT. Isn't that a reason to be proud? The kind of pride that's incorruptible. Except that the funeral didn't go well. The corpses filled the floor too quickly, much faster than the work of the funeral parlors. It was as if I could see how much work was piling up on those abruptly emptied apartments, how the grave diggers kneaded their hands and the funeral accountants rubbed their sweaty palms. Except that grandmother's apartment, most likely, will go to the state. It will also pay for the funeral at the very minimum. At about 4 o'clock, my fat, three-chin policeman bearded man came to me again, who continued to drain all sorts of containers tirelessly. It was noticeable that he was tired, and I was his last client, so he was extremely tolerant with me, having made our communication in an hour. All in the name of getting home before 6. And I was extremely grateful to him for that, because this time he was sweating a lot more than usual. And then I had a strange thought. So, absolutely wandering, I suddenly thought that maybe the whispering is a kind of voices in my head, and it's me so dashingly processing my floor, cleaning up one apartment after another, not leaving even hairy animals as witnesses. What can I say? It would be a great reason to be proud of myself as a professional maniac. But no, that's not me. I wouldn't kill my neighbor. I didn't do anything wrong. I liked him. Great guy, great way with women, outgoing, funny, nothing wrong with him. No, I certainly wouldn't have killed him. Kids. For this night, it was children's voices, a boy and a girl. They spoke in unison, like brother and sister. They were so naive, how could they not? They stood opposite my door and the door of the Zaitsev family, my last living neighbors. Father, mother, 2 kids, 2 brothers, 3-year-old Igor and 5-year-old Sergei. Both are blonde, like their father, who butchered them last, letting them live only a minute longer than their mother. But I didn't find out about it until the morning I left the apartment and saw the police. I won't hide it. I heard the suppressed screams, but I couldn't go out and try to stop them. Fear overcame me, and that's where I stopped laughing. There was so much blood that it flooded the whole apartment. Innokenty Zaitsev didn't skimp on the blows and made as many holes as he could, splattering everything he could with blood. Ruthlessly, not stopping for the pens covering his face, nor for the eyes maddened with fear. He simply exterminated. Finally, he slashed his stomach from belly button to neck, except it wasn't seppuku. Blood, tears, and then silence. Silence permeated everywhere. A completely empty floor was left. Why a floor, though? I heard that those below and above floors had given a start for a few days as well, fleeing in horror from the piling up of suicides and murders. To be honest, I didn't expect such a turn of events, and even when all the neighbors fled, I hoped that some thrill-seekers would surely come and sit on my floor with a guitar and stay on duty all night, periodically begging me for coffee or tea. I was ready to sponsor them for free, as long as they were with me. But alas, somehow no one gave a shit about the whole problem. No one showed up, and I was left to my own devices. I couldn't sleep. Not at 6. Not at 7. All I did was walk around in circles and occasionally glance at the door, waiting for nightfall. I had no way to leave. All I could do was wait for my time. So I just lay down and closed my eyes. And it came, habitually pretending to be the voice that we are closest to. And this time it was the voice of my girlfriend, standing behind the door and banging on it, screaming that she was being raped. It was so naive, so dumb, so stupid. All I did was smile and shut the door on the deadbolt. I wasn't interested in that. I was stronger than my own fear, and I got over it. But in the morning, when I went to work, I saw the body of a young girl, shredded and bent in an unnatural shape. Her skirt and pantyhose were torn, and there was a pool of blood near her. Bending over her, I wanted to turn her head to see who it was, but I froze. Suddenly I saw my girlfriend's bracelet, and that's when I woke up. Not recovering from the shock, I heard her screaming again. Without thinking, I jumped off the bed and went to the door, opening it with a sharp movement. Wow, it was really her. Only for some reason she was naked and covered in blood. I smiled. The voices had made me open the door after all.